Good day. This transmission is called the Archetypes of God. And what we mean by this is you have many names for the idea of what you call God. God, Goddess, Allah, Jehovah, Tetragrammaton, the Light, the I am that I am, Wakantanka. It doesn't really matter what it is that you use as a name to identify the concept of all that is. But it is important to understand that all of these names represent different archetypal expressions, different angles and different perspectives of the same one thing, so that all of your apparently separate religions, no matter how they present themselves, no matter how many symbols they use to represent the idea of God or aspects of God, are all talking about the same thing, but from different points of view that serve the uniqueness of the culture in which they live. But the idea is to understand that it all comes from source, it all is within the light. And the light, source, all that is, expresses itself in all these ways in order for there to be sufficient symbols for all the different cultural experiences on your planet, all the different individual experiences even within a culture on your planet. As we have said, the misinterpretation of what you have called, in one particular Judeo-Christian culture, the Ten Commandments, are really the messages that were delivered in a very different way that have been misunderstood, misquoted, because of the level of understanding that existed in the culture at the time. And the so-called First Commandment, I am the Lord your God, thou shalt not have false gods before me, really was a mistranslation and a misunderstanding of the idea that really would be more accurately represented as, I am that I am, and all reflections are me, therefore none can be false before me, for I am all that is. So the idea is to understand that all that is presents itself in a variety of archetypal forms, the father energy, the mother energy, God, Goddess, all that is, as you sometimes say. And these serve various functions and translate into your reality as, shall we say, smaller representations of all that is that are specifically designed to deal with specific cultural differences, specific ideology differences, specific individual interpretations and differences. Fundamentally speaking, the archetypes are all that is way of making sure that no matter what angle you approach all that is from, you will have a symbol and a representation that can serve your unique perspective. They are all true parts of all that is, because there's nothing outside of all that is. Anything you can experience as an archetypal representation, or even when you assume it is the entire representation of all that is true and accurate, because all that is everything that can possibly be. There's no outside to it. There is nothing that is not it. So it doesn't really matter how you relate, what relationship you form with the idea of any presentation of all that is, any idea or formation of the idea of God, be it the old man with the long beard, be it the idea of the Virgin Mother, be it the idea of a rock or a mountain. It matters not to all that is, because all that is all those things, and more, beyond even your imagining. For all that is in its archetypal presentations also forms the symbols that are relatable to not only your particular human culture, but many cultures throughout the cosmos, throughout infinity. Anything and everything being a reflection of all that is, has its own way of understanding the presentation of archetypes from source. has its own representations that make sense to their cultures. So there are an infinite variety of presentations of all that is, but it is still the same one thing fundamentally. But as you expand your consciousness and start to realize that all of these are different faces of the same thing, as many people on your planet have expressed, the 9 billion names of God are still representative of the same one thing in the holographic, multidimensional presentation that it can use to present itself, then you start to allow those differences to sort of melt away, except for the parts you feel you need, and allow yourself to have a direct relationship, more directly, with Source, without necessarily needing it to be anything but the light. And in that light, you feel the vibration of the eternal existence that it is, the vibration you translate as the unconditional love of God. This is the vibrational frequency of existence itself. It is unconditionally supporting, unconditionally loving. And the idea is that there is no judgment in this. There is no expression of the negative in this. So even when individuals in different cultures might express or experience the idea of negative or demonic experiences, you have to understand this is still all part of God. Because there is the positive, there is the negative, and there is the neutral. These are the major archetypal energies, and they can be expressed in a variety of ways that can serve either positive or negative means. So allow yourselves to lessen the differences, in a sense, use them in whatever way serves you, use them in whatever way allows you to learn the lessons you need to learn, for the agreements that you chose to experience, the challenges that you created for yourself in this life to learn who you are and grow in various situations. Again, using the positive and negative mechanisms in a variety of ways. For ultimately, again, when you return to spirit, when you remember more of who you are, it will just be an experience. You will experience the archetypal expression of your life, which is another archetypal expression, because each and every one of you is unique, and you form your own archetypes for others to connect to draw upon, to download information from and experience from, the archetype that you are of all that is, because everyone is all that is, experiencing itself as all of the individualities that you believe yourself to be. So you are also an archetype of all that is, an archetype of God, experiencing itself in a unique way, knowing itself from a unique perspective. There will be more about this concept in a future transmission, in a way that you can more readily apply in your physical reality experience. But for now, just let it settle into you that every single thing you see, every single thing you experience, in a sense, is an archetypal presentation of all that is, the trees, the rocks, the streams, the animals, the sky, the moon, the stars, the earth itself, are all different variations and different expressions of all that is of Source, of the light. And you, yourself, are also an archetype of God. We thank you for allowing us to share this concept with you this day of your time. And we ask now in return, how may we be of service to you? You may begin, if you wish, with your questions and dialogue.
Hey, Bashar. My name is Justin, and I'm up here in beautiful and rainy Salem, Oregon. It's just south of Portland. And my question is really about what you talk about in finding passion and pleasure all the time. In the middle of obviously the pandemic and building my business in the last few years, and really working hard to keep my family afloat during all of these uncertain times, I feel like a lot of my life has just become work. And even the things that I felt like I was once passionate about before, I don't feel as excited about them anymore. And so I'm having a hard time really latching onto the concept, because I feel like I'm in a weird kind of a void of a space. So any guidance that you can give on helping identify my passion, and really, really focusing on that would be just an amazing help. Thank you so much, Bashar, and hope you have a great day.
Well, as we say again, the idea of acting on your passion and recognizing it does not have to be an overarching project or a career. If you find that you have, or the feeling comes that you have lost your passion or lost your way, refocus simply by looking at everyday events. There are things in your life, simple things, everyday things, taking a walk, reading a book, speaking with your family, having simple, creative ways of exploring things together that are representative of passion, as long as they contain more excitement than anything else, any other choice, then that's representative of your passion at the moment. Act on it first before any other choice. If it contains even just a little bit more attractiveness or excitement than any other choice on a simple everyday level, just act on it first, taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further. Then look for the next thing. Always make sure you're not the one dampening the excitement, but that it wanes naturally, which is the synchronistic indication that you need to look for the next thing that contains even just a little bit more attractiveness, curiosity, or excitement or passion than anything else, and act on that next. And again, it can be simple. You might just feel like, well, the most exciting thing I can do is eat a meal. The most exciting thing I can do is tell someone a story. The most exciting thing I can do is take a walk. Allow yourself to let go of the passion needing to represent itself in any particular grandiose form, and just allow yourself to act on the simple excitements that come with everyday things. That's how you begin, and then it will snowball. But again, you have to look for the times and places where you are willing to allow yourself to act on your excitements, to allow your excitement to prove to you over time that it can support you, instead of holding on to things you believe you need for support right now that aren't exciting to you. Again, as always, you don't need to let go of the things you believe you need to support you right now if they are not going to allow yourself to believe that your excitement can do the same thing. So don't let go of those things you're doing that are not exciting if you believe you need them for support. But over time, give your excitement a chance to prove to you it can also support you, by taking whatever time you can take to act on them. And the easiest way to do that is by doing the simple things. And then let it build. Let it snowball into something bigger and bigger. And let synchronicity provide you with more time in an easy way before synchronicity responds to your wish for more time in a more challenging way. Because many people, let's say they're doing a job, for example, that they are not really excited about, and they keep wishing for more time to do what excites them, and suddenly find themselves getting fired. So the idea is, now they feel adrift. But the idea is they could have been practicing their excitement in the time they had, giving the excitement time to prove that it could support you so you can make an easier transition from what you don't prefer to what you do, rather than suddenly and abruptly finding yourself afloat, as you say, in the idea that you were holding on to something longer than you needed to, but still pushing for the idea of finding your passion. Well, something has to come to a head at some point, and if you refuse to allow for your excitement to prove it can support you over a longer period of time and an easier path for you, then you might come up against that moment where suddenly everything has to immediately change in order for you to finally get the point that you really need to start relying on your passion to replace the support that you were experiencing by doing something that isn't who you truly are.
Hi, Bashar. Good to see you again.
Good day. Good day.
You ended the little talk here about archetypes with "we also are that." I would say that the I am that we are is the primary source of the God essence, because it comes from within us. Would you agree?
Yes. And that's what I said, the I am that I am. But it doesn't matter what you call it.
Right. But isn't that primary for us to understand as humans, as opposed to putting it outside of us?
It is a primary understanding that will allow you to experience yourself in a much broader, greater way. But it's not absolutely essential if you have decided to experience a theme or a challenge that prevents you from understanding that in a particular life, because that can be a learning experience as well. But nevertheless, whether you learn it or not, it is the primary truth. It exists that way, whether you realize it or not. But yes, the realization of it is what allows you to grow and discover yourself from many different points of view.
Right. So let me ask you, these past 2 years that we've been sort of in this transition period with the whatever has been going on, have they been a vibrational adjustment for us to prepare for first contact?
Partly, yes. But again, a vibrational adjustment for you to be able to be more of yourselves, which is preparation for open contact, because only by being more of yourselves will you be prepared for open contact.
Now, partly what's been coming out from the government side of disclosure is that these, in this latest book called Skinwalker at the Pentagon, they talk about the paranormal element of the contact experience. And they say there's a negative aspect to these orbs that are appearing. Is there a way to turn that negative aspect around and make it a positive thing that the government is not seeing?
Yes, of course. First and foremost, by understanding that what they're saying about there being a negative aspect is false. It's their reflection, their experience of their own fear-based belief system that is allowing them to experience it as a negative aspect. But the essence of the phenomenon in and of itself is not presenting itself in a negative way. But it is calling forth from those that experience it the idea, as we have described before, of bringing their consciousness into closer contact with their own fear-based beliefs, which allows them to project upon the phenomenon the idea that it is the phenomenon that is negative, instead of facing the fact that it is their own belief system that is negative.
So when we change our beliefs, of course, you've talked about this, the not just everything else, but our relationship to first contact or contact changes.
Yes, of course.
And then, so we are in this incubation process, and is there something we need to do more of in order to activate the consciousness? Yes, follow your excitement, all that. And
why would you think there would be more than that? We have given you the formula and told you that it is a complete kit and leaves nothing relevant out. We give it to you that way and are explaining it that way, so you won't have to ask, is there more? That's the full instruction manual. All you have to do is actually act on it precisely and completely, and you will understand how it works, and you will understand there doesn't need to be anything more unless you decide that you wish to add something to it for the purposes of experiencing your own self-chosen process. But beyond that, there is no more. Follow the instructions, follow the formula, and you will open all of the tools that automatically are built into it, and you will get exactly what you need, exactly when you need to get it. You don't need anything more than that. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it.
Is there a particular reason you wanted to talk about archetypes today? Is there something more than our expansion of consciousness we need to embrace with that concept?
It's about understanding yourselves as aspects, true reflections of all that is. And the next transmission, titled Mirror, Mirror, will help drive this home more deeply within you, so you can really start experiencing yourself as an aspect, as a spark of the light of all that is. So yes, we build upon different things one at a time, building them up in a way that we perceive will work for those who understand and are willing to understand these concepts and take them to heart.
Are we still on track or are things shifting as you see it, as far as first contact coming in the next 10 or 15 years?
In general, you are still on track, but again, it depends on what you decide to do in the years ahead that will shift you to different versions of Earth that may already be experiencing the idea of open contact.
Thank you, Bashar.
Good day.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar. This is Sandra from Miami, Florida. I had a dream that I would like your insights on. On September 30th, in the middle of the night, I was awakened by a sensation of like being plugged into a current of electricity, so to speak. My whole body was it felt like it was vibrating, and I was perceiving a presence of an ET, a male, and I just remember being afraid to look up into his face because I was kind of afraid of being afraid, which I guess is another belief I can take a look at. And I just wanted to know what truly happened in that moment, and if that sensation of electricity or vibration was my own resistance. Any insights would be appreciated. Thank you and good day.
All right. Well, yes, the energy was your own energy, and there was some resistance, but this is what we've described before as the reason why we can't just land. There may be many extraterrestrial forms that you can interact with relatively easily, but some extraterrestrial forms, including ours, operate on a much different frequency domain than you. We come from a parallel reality that is 10 times faster than yours. And the idea of being exposed directly to our energy physically would, in fact, allow all of the different kinds of fear-based belief systems within you to be forced to the surface and can cause the idea of psychic shock. So we give you this information to allow you the process of transforming yourself and raising your frequency in a way that is safe for you to meet our frequency more easily, become more vibrationally compatible with higher frequency beings so that you can interact with them without resistance and without experiencing the idea of what you experienced and the fears you experienced in that encounter. Nevertheless, you were given enough of the difference in energy between you and a higher being, a higher frequency being, to allow you to integrate that energy within yourself, to get used to the idea that you're experiencing your own energy on a higher level, and therefore raise to that frequency, to meet that frequency, to become more vibrationally compatible with the being that you're dealing with, which is most likely a counterpart version of you in another reality that's helping you bootstrap yourself up the frequency ladder. So have fun with it. Don't be afraid. But if fear comes up, find the belief system that generates the fear. Because remember, you can't have an emotional experience without believing something to be true first. So you're given an opportunity by experiencing the fear to examine those areas in your consciousness where you have a belief that would generate the fear you experienced in that encounter. Remember, you're fundamentally an indestructible being. So there's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing can truly annihilate you. Even though your survival mechanisms in the lower part of your brain may kick in, there is really nothing to be afraid of.
Hello.
Good day.
Hello, Bashar. It's
Good day.
Really nice day. I am really excited to be communicating with you right now, and we've been in conversation for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking today about how quite some time ago connected around the idea of Anima, one of your social engineers, and in a discussion of art. And I feel like the project that, maybe some seeds were planted way back when is now coming more into bloom. And it's an interesting moment because I'm about to transition into having my time to myself to create in a way that I haven't before. So
how exciting.
It's incredibly exciting. And I've really been using, the formula to work with that and like keeping my mind open, even as it's like twisted and turned in interesting ways. So yes. I'm just curious if there's anything, any follow up with Anima around this like art project.
All right. Are you having fun doing this, I assume?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, what else do you need to know except to keep moving forward and exercise your creative imagination?
I don't really need to know anything more, but it would be interesting to know more if there was anything specific, because I was just reflecting on
all
that.
Right. Well, let me ask you the question. Why do you think that you're missing something?
I don't know that I feel like I'm missing something.
But you're asking, is there anything more? Which implies that you think something's missing.
That's a good point.
Thank
you always
you.
make really good points, Bashar. I guess I was just curious about it. If you were
missing something?
I mean, if there was more to unfold in that particular direction.
Do you feel like you're not doing enough? That you're not expressing the idea of your art as fully as you possibly could be? Are you holding back your creative imagination in one direction or another?
I think to some extent I was, but I don't think that that's going to be true going forward, because I will have more energy to dedicate to that more specifically.
Is there a particular expression that you're more excited about than any other that you haven't begun expressing yet?
Not exactly. It's more that I feel that I have to rush when I'm doing it, because
Why?
there were other things. Why?
Yes, why? Do you not believe in the understanding of synchronicity's perfect timing?
I do, but I still get caught up in...
Excuse me. When a person on your planet says, I do, but, that means they don't.
Fair enough. Can you understand it sometimes and not other times?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
But the idea is, why don't you understand it at other times? It's fine when you understand it and move forward in the way that works for you and is representative of your passion. But we don't have to talk about that. We're talking about the times when you don't stay in that vibration and what would be the reason for that. So let's go back to what you said. Why do you believe you have to rush? What's your hurry? Do you have a deadline?
Sure. I think I'm just transitioning out of that. And I guess this is that transition that a lot of us are going through, of letting go of things that we don't really need to hold on to anymore. So I think I'm at one of that, major stages right now of letting that go.
All right. Congratulations. Do you understand the paradox that sometimes you have to slow down to speed up?
Sure. Yes. That I've experienced viscerally. Yeah.
All right. Well, would you like to keep experiencing it?
Sure.
Then why choose anything else? Why choose any reason that takes you out of that state, if that's what you say you prefer to be in? Why?
I think I'm sometimes influenced by the people around me.
You are never influenced by the people around you. You take upon yourself to influence yourself based on what others may say or do, but they don't actually ever directly influence you. You influence yourself based on some reason for matching the frequency that they're offering you. So why would you do that if those frequencies are not vibrationally compatible with what you prefer?
And would that mean that empathy is that different than empathy? Or I might be just, I think...
There is a difference, because empathy and compassion can allow you to understand what a person may be experiencing for themselves, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you take that energy on yourself, that you convert your own vibrational frequency in a way that allows you to feel more than you need to understand. Empathy is more of a vibrational matching just for the purpose of understanding. Whereas, just to use another word in your language, if you overly sympathize with someone, then you may be taking on the vibration beyond what you need to simply understand them, and you may then be starting to actually match the negative frequencies that they may be giving off and experiencing some of what they're experiencing. Now, again, some people can use that to positive effect, but is that what you need to do with your art?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Art in its various forms is a mirror that allows people that are looking at the art, looking at the mirror, to see different aspects and understand different aspects of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use your experiences with other people and put it in your art, if you wish, in a way that allows people to understand the things that you are observing, the things you're understanding about your relationship to other people. But certainly you don't have to ever stop yourself by lowering your vibration to a level that doesn't necessarily represent where you prefer to be. Unless, again, you're making an art out of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still your choice.
Right.
Remember, that's your greatest power, the freedom to choose.
Right.
So, whenever you may choose something that you don't really prefer, stop, take a moment, take a breath, and ask yourself, What is the reason I'm creating, even in an artistic way, to make this choice? Do I really have a positive reason for doing this? Can I apply this in a positive way? Or do I really need to do this at all? Take the
Right.
time to examine those things and find out what the reasons are for why you would choose to do what you're doing and why you would choose to experience and feel what you're feeling and experiencing, because that's the result of a belief.
You're right.
Yes, I know. That's why I said it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, Bashar. As always, I appreciate our interactions and thank you.
Did that serve you?
It did.
All right. Then we thank you for your interaction. Have a good day.
You too.
Always.
Hi, Bashar. My name is Cheryl. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was on a camping trip near Tucson, Arizona, and about 3 a.m. I saw a very unusual phenomenon. It was like slow flash bulbs appearing in different portions of the sky, and they were quite large, and from my perspective, they were a little bit smaller than the size of the moon. During the next night of camping, I decided to see if I could see this phenomenon again, and I saw a very unusual bright light. And then outside of it, a smaller light blinked and then orbited around this bright light. This happened several more times over the course of an hour. And then all of a sudden, those unusual lights faded away, and I saw nothing but normal stars. And then all of a sudden, those stars faded away, and I noticed that the sky was actually covered with clouds. I am absolutely astonished. I am certain that I was awake, and I was wondering if you could give me your perspective. Thanks so much, Bashar. Bye.
As many people on your planet expand their consciousness, they will begin to peer into other dimensionalities, or their senses will become more sensitized to the comings and goings of dimensional portals and other kinds of crafts that may come through them as they pass through your reality. Or you will be more sensitive to the different variations and expressions of energy that your planet gives off, seeing different portals and vortices that exist in your atmosphere. So this may be a multitude of things impinging upon your senses, seeing more multidimensionally, and being able to experience energies that express themselves that were invisible to you before.
Good day, Bashar. I'm very happy to be with you at this moment. Very, very
Alright.
exciting.
It is our passion and our pleasure to interact with you as well.
Thank you. I loved listening to you about the concept of gods. And, I'm reflecting to myself, it took me about 25 years to relieve myself from the concept of God, of religion,
Yes.
religious, and become free to be who I am, and I am God.
Yes, everyone
And
is.
yes. So I wonder, in our civilization, how far as a collective are we from freeing ourselves to become the free that we should be?
Well, again, please do remember that you keep shifting collectives. You never change the world you're on. You never change the collective you're in at any given moment. You change yourself and you shift to a different version of Earth that already simultaneously exists, that contains a different collective that already believes more in the direction that you prefer. So by speaking about this in a linear way, as if it would appear that your world is changing, overall, as a general idea, not precise, general idea, over the course of the next half century, the next 50 of your years, for the most part, we'll see the greatest shift and you'll be experiencing the greatest change. But again, it's simply because you've shifted to a version of Earth that is already that way.
Yeah. As a collective, I wonder, while you say it, each of us shift into a new reality that we are aligned with.
Yes.
So does that matter as a collective, if we shift as a collective, or does it only go by individual shifts to a collective?
Both. Collectives can shift. There can be consensus agreement among many different individuals to shift in the same way, to the same level, the same frequency. So, yes.
Well, that's good news. 50 years is not bad.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
A blink of an eye. But again, individuals, to some degree, can sometimes shift more quickly than the collective. It just depends.
It depends by what, by how much of it I shifted.
Yes, and also whether you chose to be an example of the shift that can allow others to see you as a living example that they can shift too. So, in other words, there have to be some that are out in front to be able to act as examples for the rest to know they can shift as well.
Yeah, I got you. I understand it. Thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome.
So I live outside of the city when we have a beautiful forest that I walk on the path. And since the last transmission that you spoke about the shells of around us,
Yes.
when I walk, there's a certain area that I feel strongly the elementals
Yes.
present there. So since that transmission occurred, I become more aware, meaning I tuned in more. So each time I go to that location, I send my thought to them, and sometimes verbally I'll say hello, sometimes mentally I'll say hello.
Yeah.
It's funny enough that the first day that after listening to you, walking down there at a large tree, we have a very old trees in that location, shifted, and the crackling of wood sounded. And
Yeah.
I was like, I accepted it as if a communication happened.
It was.
But then it was there because it didn't happen after that again.
That's all right. These things will fluctuate. It's all right. Still a communication.
Is it?
Yes.
I would love that. You said when you say communication, for me, it's a communication probably in a limited way of a human communicating.
There is information in that experience. You as a human may interpret it in different ways, and you may process it to the point where the information becomes understandable at a different time. That doesn't mean it wasn't a communication. Mm-hmm. You may not know it immediately, but you will eventually understand how the communication relates to you and how to relate to it.
So you also mentioned that to do it in meditation and all of that, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm impatient.
Why? Does that mean you think there's a better place to be than where you are?
No, I'm very good with where I'm at.
Except when you're impatient.
Yeah, the impatient is like, okay, I'm here. I recognize you. You're in this location. You are in everywhere, but in this location, I feel you. Right. So I would like this.
So you have insistence.
I do, obviously. Thank you. Yeah.
Let it unfold in the way that it naturally unfolds. You have to trust that it will unfold perfectly for you. If you insist, you're actually shortchanging yourself from the perfect way it could unfold.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And by insisting, you actually make yourself incapable of hearing other forms of communication that might be coming to you.
I needed to repeat this. What did you just say to me?
By insisting on hearing the communication or having an experience in one particular way, that insistence can actually prevent you from receiving other forms of communication that might be coming to you. You won't perceive them if you insist on a particular outcome because you don't know that that's the best outcome.
I so agree.
So you might actually miss forms of communication that would be coming to you if you insist on a particular outcome, because that may not be what works best for you.
And the only way to be open to it is not to insist and just allow.
Well, again, if you understand that your insistence is a limitation you're placing on yourself, why would you do it?
No, you're good. You're right. You're right.
I know.
Okay, thank you.
Again, it is our passion and our pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you, Bashar. Bye.
Good day.
Hi, Bashar. How are you?
So I really appreciate the fact that the messages that you've been giving us have a sense of practicalness, concreteness, and consistency in it. And I think that there should be people out there that should treat these materials coming from the invisible world, the world that's beyond our senses, such as from near-death experiencers or from authentic channel beings such as yourself, to treat this information and materials as more than just philosophy, but with a more grounded practicalness. So my question to you is, if we are to study this information as a subject matter, for example, the mechanism that you described about the higher mind and physical mind interaction, things like that, how can we study it? What kind of methodology we can use? Yeah, so that's my question. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Goodbye.
Remember that first and foremost, we do say that the formula we give you is not a philosophy. It is literally a description of the mechanics, the practical mechanics energetically in consciousness of how you actually create the manifestation of your physical reality experience. So we would suggest that you begin with that. A complete understanding of the instruction manual that describes the structure, nature, and mechanics of how you use consciousness to create your physical reality experience will inform you about any other practical way to relate to any philosophical or metaphysical concept, because you will already understand the basics as a framework against which to compare and examine any other philosophical and metaphysical concept to see how it relates to that physical, mechanical, practical framework. And the things that don't match it, that don't fit in that framework, you can understand as mythological chaff, so to speak, as a misunderstanding or an outdated definition that simply isn't really representative of the actual mechanics of your consciousness. This is coming in the near future, given by the channel as the unified theory of metaphysics, providing a framework to understand metaphysical concepts as the physics of consciousness. Therefore, when you understand it all as the physics of consciousness, then you will understand how it practically applies to the creation of your physical reality.
Hi.
Good day.
Hi, Bashar.
Good day.
Good day. Bashar, can I ask you, first thing is, are we still in the eye of the needle?
Yes. As I said, this will progress all the way into and through 2023 to prepare you for letting go of things that you don't need anymore, to streamline yourselves so that you can be more yourself and pass more easily through that particular energy tunnel, and prepare yourself for the beginning of the window of open contact. So yes.
Okay. So it's good to know, because it seems like this year has been even more challenging.
Yes.
At least personally.
Well, you're in the center of it.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess just keep letting go.
Yes. Keep examining yourself, keep investigating with honesty, know yourself, let go of those things that truly are vibrationally not compatible with you, that don't serve you. Be yourself more. Follow the formula more precisely, more often. That will accelerate you. That will prepare you.
Okay. And then, Bashar, I have a question. So I can do that. And how do I shift timelines to match the one that I prefer?
You're doing it all the time. Follow the formula. The formula is the rudder that you use to navigate yourself as you constantly shift billions of times per second through different versions of Earth. And with your hand firmly on the rudder, by following the formula and acting it out as precisely as possible, you are steering yourself in the direction of more and more versions of Earth that are more and more reflective of the vibration that you prefer. So you're already shifting. You don't have to learn to shift. You have to learn to steer. And the way you learn to steer is by following the formula and making it first nature to do so.
Got it. I just came back from Guam like a week ago, and it's been kind of challenging to adjust back, and I'm not sure why. Is it?
Well, because you are expanding yourself and not coming back as the self you were. You're coming back as a different self, and therefore you have to take on the things that are now relevant for the different you, not attempt to incorporate the things that are no longer you.
Got it.
Does that help?
Yeah.
All right. Happy
Thanks,
shifting.
Bashar.
Happy shifting.
Hello, Bashar. Good day to you. Aaron from Germany here. I've noticed that in the current stage of the Eye of the Needle experience, we are actually shifting to a whole new way of creating our experience of dreamed reality. Permission slips literally stop working overnight. And I've noticed that particularly the process of wondering, the frequency of wonder, is coming online as a very simple yet absolutely powerful tool to create your preferred reality and preferred experiences. I was wondering if you could shed some light on the process of wondering and the frequency of wonder from your perspective. Thank you very much. Bye.
The frequency of wonder is the frequency of the soul, the frequency of curiosity and wonderment, amazement and beauty, is coming directly from your connection to your own soul, expressing more of the soul vibration through you physically. The idea of the change in permission slips is usually an indication of this, that you are accelerating, that you are not holding on to anything that doesn't serve you and letting it go very rapidly, that you will ultimately realize you are the permission slip, the primary one that makes the decisions about what changes to make within yourself. So this is a sign usually of an acceleration and a connection more strongly to the idea of bringing more of your soul's energy through your physical form.
Hello, Bashar.
Good day.
I'm really grateful for the chance to talk to you today.
It is our deepest appreciation to experience the co-creation of this interaction.
So, my mom committed suicide a few weeks ago.
All right.
And it's brought up a lot of questions for me about your teachings that I'd like to explore.
By all means.
So everyone tells me that there's nothing I could have done or been differently in order to help, and that it wasn't anything that I was doing that led to the creation of that manifestation.
Yes, you made an agreement. You made an agreement with each other that this might be likely to happen. But again, it's not that it had to, but certainly you are not to be blamed for anything because other people make choices.
It's that I see a lot of parallels between it and my process and my thinking and my experience. Like, I held the idea of her intention for the last few years, and she seemed to be held in suffering during that time. Yeah. And then literally like 2 days after I decided I was ready to open my heart and start to forgive her and look for a new relationship, she killed herself.
Well, now you have one. Now you have the relationship. By opening your heart, it let her know she could move on and develop a relationship with you from a higher plane. She will still make choices to allow her in some way, shape, or form to finish whatever it is she may not have completed in terms of the choices that she made, in terms of the reasons why she may have chosen that. In exploring her life review, she may realize at some point she may have to experience certain challenges that are similar again in order to go towards completeness because she made a commitment to do so. Nevertheless, the choice to transition into spirit at that time can be of great assistance to you by allowing you to develop a relationship with her higher self. By stretching to make a connection, you stretch towards spirit, and that can help you, in a loving way, learn more about your spiritual connections as well. So please do understand that the relationship still exists. And now she is free from whatever it is she may have been experiencing that made that seem like the only choice. She will use it to her advantage, but for right now, her focus is on making sure you use the experience to your advantage to become more of who you are, knowing that she now, from that position, loves you unconditionally and is free from all pain and suffering.
And I've had pretty good clarity on that. I've honestly experienced this as the deepest healing process of my life. It has been transforming me.
Yes.
And I think the only thing that keeps me looking backwards is this idea of responsibility. And was it, did I hold her in pain? And is it because of my process that her journey went this way?
No. She is capable of making her own decisions.
So in that vein, since we're constantly navigating different realities billions of times a second, I'm also wondering, why did I find myself in the one where this happened instead of one where she would seem to stick around longer or her life experience could play out differently?
Because of what it's going to teach you that you felt was important for you to learn. You haven't really learned it completely yet. So you're asking about an agreement you made that hasn't played completely out yet.
So I understand how it could be the perfect reflection for me and like for my process.
Yes.
But then I wonder.
Yes.
So yes, you're talking about her and how she's doing fine in spirit and she made her choice.
Yes.
But since we're continuously creating our experience of others out of different, distinct, parallel reality versions of them,
yes,
who was I in relationship with? And which version of her will I be connected with in spirit?
A different version, a greater self. More of who she actually is as a reflection of the infinite.
I guess
whatever it is you need is what you will connect to in her.
Yeah. Sorry for kind of nervously talking over you.
No, that's all right.
So I guess I'm wondering about whether or not she's real in and of herself. Or
yes, of course she is. That doesn't mean you're not creating your version of it.
So if she has her own reality, how can it be that there are some where she doesn't do this and some where she does do this?
Because you're talking about a much higher level of the being that can experience many different things simultaneously. Right now, you're focused on what you understand as the spirit individual that represented your mother. That's the level that we're addressing right now. But on a much greater level, remembering that you are all that is, you can experience everything and anything simultaneously. It just depends on what level of the consciousness you're referring to when you talk about forming a relationship with it.
But she does have her own experience and her own choices, and she's not just a character on my screen or something.
No, you didn't make her up. The idea is everyone is a fundamental existing being, but you still create your version as an interface to relate to. It's like saying, you understand when you have a telephone conversation with a friend, you're not actually hearing their real voice? You're hearing a recreation electronically that sounds like them, but they have their own voice. It's just converted into electronic signals that are reconstituted into audio signals at your end. So it's like that. You're creating your version that you can relate to, even though she has her own reality, just as she creates her version of you, even though you have your own reality. Just like the telephone recreates the voice that isn't the original voice, but it's representative of something that is real.
Yeah, so my whole life I've been recreating her out of many possible variants to create the experience I've needed of her.
Yes, exactly. As she has done with you.
But then in spirit, where we are connected in a continuous relationship is on a higher level of like all my possibilities, all her possibilities.
Well, yes, those that are relevant for whatever level you happen to be exploring, yes.
So then would it be that like when I'm in spirit, it's kind of like my oversoul is, because sometimes you've said that when we lose someone, they don't really miss us because they're already with us in spirit. And is that like an oversoul and an oversoul together?
Well, no, it's more like the higher mind. The oversoul is something even higher. But the idea is, again, it is a more direct connection with the reality of the being. Remember that physical reality is a projection of consciousness. It's a dream. That's why you kind of have to create your version in the way that you do. Now, you're still creating your version even in spirit, but it's a closer connection to the reality of the person, the reality of the being. There's less in the way. There's less you have to recreate.
I think there's a lot I'll have to listen back to, and I might not fully understand all of this.
That's all right.
I think what's been important to me is to understand that she exists in her own right and that I didn't make this in some tragic way where it was my fault.
No, it's not your fault.
One of the thoughts that kept recurring was like that if I had had more space in my heart for her sooner, there would have been space in my world for her.
Yes, but you see, the idea of opening your heart is the point, and it didn't have to result in the idea of her choosing to stay. In fact, the idea of the opening of your heart continues in the relationship that you will be forming with her as she is now. That's the point.
Yeah, and that's what I'm reaching for, is the ability to relax into this and receive all the gifts that it offers without holding myself in blame and guilt.
Exactly. So her transition into spirit gives you a wonderful opportunity to accelerate the process of opening your heart and being more of yourself.
It's happening.
Yes. And therefore it was a very loving thing for her to do. And this was done by arrangement and agreement between the two of you.
Wonderful to connect with you. Thank you for helping me today.
And you as well. It is our passion and our pleasure to do so. Good day.
Good day.
Hello, dear Bashar. Hello, dear Sirius. Thank you for this opportunity to interact with the 13, as it is my wish to find myself in a timeline when the 13 return to Earth and retrieve the 13 crystal skulls and unite them. And thank you, dear Morning Star. Thank you, dear Merkaba Morning Star, for being the embodiment of this unification of the heaven-earth co-creation. Thank you.
Aveo. There is nothing I really need to add to this except again to say that the only way to navigate to that is to follow the formula.
Good day, Bashar. How are you?
Perfect. And you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
So the fun thing about this timing is, I think it was last year, November, we spoke. And when I was talking to you, I had a bald eagle that showed up.
Yeah,
and interestingly enough, I had a bald eagle show up yesterday in San Diego. And I thought that was very auspicious. And then I'm now in Maui celebrating a birthday gift to myself, and a conversation I had with a friend, Koa. He brought up the star Altair, and it felt very reverent, or very significant. I should say I had reverence for the conversation, but significant to bring up to you. Do you have anything you want to share about that star?
Altair can be representative of higher frequencies, of soaring on a higher level, of connecting more strongly with the higher mind.
Ooh, can you say a little bit more about that?
In understanding that when you decide to have what you call a physical incarnational experience, there is always the higher mind that is non-physical that still exists in the spirit level simultaneously. Now, the higher mind and physical mind can decide, in a sense, together, when you arrange or set up the idea of the physical experience, exactly how much energy you will allot from the non-physical to the physical realm. Will you allow it to be a 50-50 partnership proposition? Will you allow the physical mind to experience less than 50% or more than 50% of the energy that you are in total? The vibration that you're referring to as the energy of Altair allows for the incorporation of more energy overall, a sharing of the energy in a more balanced way between the higher and physical minds, so that you can experience things in the way sometimes that the higher mind experiences them from the broader point of view. The vibration of Altair, therefore, is symbolic of the idea of a true partnership on a higher level and a balance point that allows you to grow and expand in a very balanced way, experiencing more of what the higher mind experiences while you are still physical, and therefore allowing you to experience both the attributes of spirit and the attributes of physical reality, similar in the way to our civilization being quasi-physical and having the traits of spirit and the traits of physical beings simultaneously.
That's perfect. So the thing that I actually really wanted to talk to you about is the experiences I'm having where I feel like I'm dreaming in my wake state, and everything very now. And it feels like lucid dreaming, where there's awareness that I'm dreaming, but able to shift and change things.
Yes, and that is also the vibration specifically of the symbol of Altair, is the concept of achieving lucidity.
And so that brings me to I have such appreciation for you and your teachings, especially the formula, the amount of synchronicity and it feels like magic in my life from following my highest excitement this trip specifically. And so the idea of the lucidity in my waking state, seeing things before they happen, getting things manifesting what almost feels like out of thin air, is occurring in weird ways, and small things and big things, and just the signs and symbols that keep coming up. So the eagles and the hawks and the crows continue to be a fun symbol.
Yes, well, this is the new normal on your planet.
Perfect. That's perfect. And the only other thing I want to mention is the idea of symbols. When we spoke the last time, you had mentioned about the birds and my connection, and to give them the meaning, the symbols that were meaningful to me. And so I just love the synchronicity of the conversation of Altair. And is there any symbol with eagles specifically? There was an eagle that came to me in a vision that I didn't know was a real thing, the Batalor eagle. It's a tricolored eagle, and that keeps coming up. Is there anything that you want to add about that?
You can investigate some of the indigenous understanding of the reference and symbol of what the eagle represents to the American Indian.
Okay. Thank you, Bashar. Good day. I appreciate you.
Good day.
Hi, Bashar. My name is River. I'm coming to you from Temecula, California. I would love to ask about these different archetypes that I've been getting in plant medicine journeys recently. And it's the same archetypes over and over again. One is Santa Fe, and the element of like dry desert, sand, and just like a lot of smoke, and the archetype of a pregnant woman with brown skin. And another archetype that's been coming up has been ayahuasca, and specifically like the snake in the rainforest. Very much a lot of humidity and water and earth, and then lastly, another archetype of sailing a ship, being a sailor, the captain of a ship, and feeling the waves and the rocking of the water of the sea. And I was just wondering if you could shine some light, your perspective on these archetypes. And typically I've noticed that I'm more of a male character as a sailor, and then for ayahuasca, that archetype is more woman and snake kind of energy. So anything you had to say about that, I would love to hear. Thank you.
This is actually a number of different things all mixed together. First of all, some of this is what you refer to typically in linear terms as memories of other lives. Now, again, everything exists simultaneously, but you make energetic connections to other beings that exist, whether you think of them as the past or the future, doesn't matter. Everything exists in the present. But linearly speaking, you usually call these things past life memories. So the idea of the sailing on the ocean and so on and so forth is more in that direction of connecting your energy to beings that are sailors and merchants and traders, exchanging goods and information across vast oceans as a symbolic archetypal representation of the exchange of information between different levels of your consciousness in order to make stronger connections and stronger bonds to integrate yourself more fully. The idea of the ayahuasca and the teachers of the earth and the idea of the Southwest is more a representation of connections to indigenous American Indian experiences and shamanistic experiences also in South American jungles. The idea being also that you're attempting to integrate and balance the masculine and feminine energies within yourself. And the snake represents the idea of ancient wisdom that makes you pregnant with new ideas to bring forth a new you. So the idea of the polarization of the dry desert sands and the lush humidity of the jungles is also what you're exploring and bringing into integration, are those ideas of what may seem to be opposites, and yet they all come from the same basic central source. So all of this has to do with interconnection, forming stronger bonds between different aspects of your consciousness, the physical mind, the higher mind, the polarization of different experiences and environments that you're connecting to that allow you for stronger integration within yourself of many different aspects that will allow yourself to be born anew as a new person. So you have many different symbols here archetypally to help you understand the integration going on in your journey right now.
Hello, Bashar.
Good day. Good day.
I have a few questions about emotions in the home. And the first one is, how come our emotions are displayed more intensely and deeply in the home and family rather than at work or socially?
Because in the home, you have the ability to understand where the emotions come from and go through whatever process you need on a personal level to allow your belief systems to be sorted out and to be chosen based on what you prefer. Whereas when you are in a working situation, the idea then is to bring what you've learned about being who you are and applying it to a team effort, so to speak, rather than working on the idea in a more personal and private way when you have the time to do so. So one is inner work, and one is the result of the inner work going into outer work.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I relate to that. Thank you.
Yes.
And so when we're triggered emotionally in the home, it can look like we regress to the age, maybe that possible trauma happened. Is that what happens? Because, you know, you can just get like childlike sometimes, whether it's you or your partner or...
Yes, you take on the vibration. You can, don't have to, take on the vibration of the timing of the occurrence. But again, the idea is to allow yourself to understand how you can benefit from what you experienced and how you can become a different person that no longer has that history.
And sometimes it's harder than others. So is that just practice? Like you see the same kind of pattern happening again. Is that just practice of mindfulness and just growth?
Yes. But again, it can be an indication of what kind of beliefs you're specifically holding on to that don't necessarily allow you to move forward. So remember, there's no such thing as an inherently difficult situation. Only the belief makes it seem difficult. And if you understand how beliefs work and how they do that to perpetuate themselves, speaking of negative beliefs, then that's something to understand more clearly as well. Because sometimes it may not even be that you really have that much left to work on, but the negative belief may not want you to let it go, and therefore it may make it seem that there's more there than meets the eye.
So it can just go and repeat until you kind of understand that, get that at a deeper level.
Exactly, because that's one of the tricks of the negative belief, is making you think that, well, this is going to happen again, and well, this is going to happen again, and well, this is going to happen again, and well, this is going to happen again. And that just keeps you in a loop that doesn't really allow you to realize you may have actually already dealt with this. It's the last vestige. It's one of the tricks that represents the last vestige of a negative belief attempting to prevent you from letting it go. That's just how negative beliefs perpetuate themselves. So there may be nothing left to really look at, but the negative belief may convince you that you'll keep revisiting this.
Yeah, tricky.
Yes, very. So when you understand how negative beliefs work, you'll start to see through the smoke and mirrors. Now, if there is truly something for you to deal with, then you'll find that too. But pay attention to the fact that negative beliefs may be giving you empty threats when there's nothing to resolve anymore.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. It's really helpful.
You're welcome.
And so our family ancestors, their unresolved emotional issues, do they get passed down until someone in the family lineage evolves them? Like their negative beliefs, say my great-grandmother's negative belief, if she never transformed that, that's going to be somewhere in me and coming through?
Possibly. It depends on the agreements that you have made in your relationship to the idea of your family. Now, other people will also, in some way, shape, or form, on some level, continue to also resolve those things in their own way, on their own path. But yes, you may have agreed to play a part in helping to resolve that issue for the family. It just depends on your agreements.
Okay. And the home, is the home, the vibration of the home, is it a reflection of our higher selves? You know how like your ships can be a reflection of your higher self. Do our homes have a similar vibration for us?
Well, they can, but usually on your planet at this point and for some time, they've been more a reflection of the agreements that you've made with each other as a soul family.
Okay, and with those agreements as a soul family, when we do resolve them,
yes,
and somewhat, embrace the differences rather than make them wrong or try and make them a different way,
then you tap into the possibility of the home becoming the higher mind.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's what I was about to ask. That's the idea, is not to have a fake existence in the home, but it's to get to a point of complete peace around each other, because it does feel more intense in the home than anywhere else.
Well, yes, because that's where you've agreed to work on these things with each other. Because it's more intimate, it's more personal.
And then when we, as a collective family, whether we're conscious of it or not, but we're at peace with each other, that creates a vibration that can, I don't know, can it create a vibration where we can connect deeper to our ancestors or to beings like yourself because of that?
Of course. Right. As you raise your frequency in any way, shape, or form, by resolving an issue, by following your passion, by clearing yourself out of things that are not vibrationally compatible with you, you raise your frequency. And as you raise your frequency, you make yourself become a better antenna for higher frequency information and experiences and connections.
So if a family can become at that vibration, then together we can all be that for each other.
Yes, of course. That's what you actually are for each other, whether you know it or not. It's just that because you have made certain agreements to process through certain things so you can discover, who am I in this situation? Who am I facing this challenge? Who am I in that circumstance? You're reflecting to each other what you've agreed you need to know for your own expansion, self-discovery, and growth.
Yeah, so as well as like my brother sometimes could be reflecting a part of my own unconscious that I'm not yet strong enough to see. So I see it in him.
Yes.
And then I can take it. Yeah. Okay.
It can be that. It can be that. It doesn't always have to be, but it can be that. You have to pay attention and have discernment to decide what's going on.
Okay.
And that just takes honest self-investigation. Yes. Just takes honest
and
self-investigation.
And a lot of patience.
No, takes no patience at all. None whatsoever. The only reason you need patience is because you become impatient with what's going on in the moment. If you live fully in the moment, you are completely engaged. There's nothing better that you think is coming along, and therefore you will not be impatient because you do not require patience to be in the moment.
I am choosing to believe that. So it's my negative belief that would say, or anyone's that would say, it's somewhat more challenging to do it in the home or family, or that's because I've made the contracts with those people.
Yes.
So there's a different vibration.
Of course there's a different vibration. But again, it can be challenging, but challenges do not have to be a struggle.
Good. Another great point, Bashar.
Thank you.
Another great point. You're welcome. Okay, well, that's my questions. Thank you so much.
Aveo.
Yeah, unconditional love.
And to you as well.
Thank you.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
So it's written that in the beginning was the one, and there was nothing other than the one. Is that true?
Yes, but there's no beginning. That's a concept that happens within the one. The one is not subject to beginnings and endings. It is just existence itself. It just is.
Okay. And why does God let the worst crimes happen on earth without using his or her power to stop it?
You must understand that question is extremely outdated in terms of the perspective of what God is all about. Everything is made of God. Everything is made from God. Everything is God. There are no exceptions. God is not outside controlling things. The idea is that if God, all that is everything, it doesn't exert its will on anything. Everything that happens is part of God. So there's no idea of controlling it. Everything just is an experience of God, by God, in God, from God. Everything can be learned from. Everything can be used in a positive way if you are willing to use it that way. The questions and the way you're asking cause much confusion and misunderstanding on your planet by asking questions that are human-based questions from a human perspective. God does not function in the way you are asking the question.
Is there good and evil? And is evil the same as negative? Or how can you help us understand that?
From our perspective, again, it's not a value judgment. It is simply a recognition that there are positive, negative, and neutral situations, mechanically speaking. Negative is that which causes the experience of segregation, separation, diminishment, disconnection. That doesn't mean you actually are disconnected, but it can create an experience of disconnection. Positive is that which integrates, causes the experience of connection, allows you to realize you are always connected, and creates an expansive awareness of consciousness. The idea, therefore, is that the concept of evil is simply an individual who becomes fixated in their intention to promote the idea of the negative mechanism as an actual intention. But the idea is that negative mechanisms are in and of themselves not value judged as evil. It is simply the idea of how things are utilized, because even positive mechanisms can be used in a negative way, and negative mechanisms can be used in a positive way. So it is simply the idea of the recognition of intention as to whether to align with the flow of positive creation or the receding energy of negative creation.
And so why is it on this particular planet that such horrible things happen, and it seems like anything goes here. Anything can happen in the negative direction or the positive.
Again, from the soul's point of view, these are all opportunities to learn how to transform things in a way that teaches you more about who you are as an aspect and a projection of all that is. So giving you challenges to transform, giving you challenges to overcome, allowing you to learn to transform from negative to positive in your experiential reality, allows you to discover more about your own innate power as an expression and an extension of all that is. Without these challenges, you do not learn, you do not grow. I'm not saying you have to have them to the degree that you've had them, but the idea is they give you an opportunity to discover who you truly are in any number of given situations, whether they are positive or negative. It's just that the negative ones provide the challenge that allow you the opportunity to overcome things you don't prefer, to see if you can transform them, to see if you can exercise your power on earth, to see if you can remember that you are an aspect of all that is. It is given to you. It is in your hands to make that determination. The idea of all that is doesn't make that determination for you, other than the idea that it presents itself because of the neutral central point as approximately 51% positive and 49% negative. But it's up to you to determine which way you prefer to go, even when given a negative scenario that is operating negatively, mechanically speaking, energetically speaking. It is up to you to determine whether to feed the negative energy or feed the positive energy. That is your power, the freedom to choose, the freedom to be the unique aspect of all that is that you are. And without those challenges, you do not grow.
Is the fire and brimstone devil based on Kernanos represented in any other ET civilizations? And why would a group worship it as an archetype of God rather than as a typical benevolent version?
Kernanos is a nature spirit. And the idea is that on one level, it can function as an archetype, but it functions more as an archetype of nature itself. As an aspect of all that is, as an aspect of God, nature certainly is an archetype, and many aspects of nature can be represented as archetypes. But Kernenos is specifically about the idea of the, shall we say, shepherd of nature, the caretaker of nature, the caretaker of the nature spirits. And the idea that it has been perceived negatively is simply the idea of the result of more modernized interpretations that are fear-based, that have to do with your experience as a culture in the disconnection of yourself from nature, the lack of realization that you are nature, an expression of it. So fear-based beliefs have transformed the idea of the caretaker of nature into something negative for many people in their belief system doctrines.
Now, this question says, well, why did he allow his image to be altered to one of evil rather than having it remain one of nature?
Again, the question is asked from a misunderstood point of view. It is not up to Kernenos to decide how individuals may perceive him. Just as, why does anyone allow anyone else to perceive them negatively when that may not be the actual truth? So the idea is that you don't have the power to disallow. You can explain, you can share how it might not be that way, but another person still has the power to decide to treat you in a negative way. So it's not about the idea that Kernenos allows or doesn't allow that. All you have to do is look more closely in the deeper understanding of that particular being to understand that it doesn't have to be looked at negatively, that it can be understood from a positive point of view. But being a nature spirit, it does, like anything, contain the ability to reflect positive or negative attributes, depending upon how one decides to view it, what the perspective of the person viewing it has based on how they filter that perspective through their own positive or negative belief systems. So again, the idea is Kernenos has no more ability to allow or disallow anyone to perceive him in whatever way a person decides they're going to perceive him.
And in mythology, there are many stories of gods killing other gods. How does that relate to all that is? And is it true that once the supreme god was actually a goddess, but that she was destroyed by a male god?
These things are, again, more representative archetypally of the struggle within humanity to balance itself between the male and the female energies. Some of those stories, some of them, are representative of actual events between extraterrestrial beings that were connected to your Earth, especially considering the Anunnaki times. But most of that is simply the representation of the suppression of different energies that are not allowed to be balanced in your society, played out on an archetypal energy level in your consciousness.
And in the Holy Bible, there is an account of the deluge claiming God to be the cause. Aside from the idea that God is behind everything, can you tell us anything about what caused the deluge in a physical sense? Is it related to the asteroid belt? And if not, what is it that caused the asteroid belt?
Yes, the deluge that you're referring to is the result of an asteroidal impact in the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, the breakup of the planet in the orbit now occupied by the asteroid belt that is usually referred to as Maldek or Marduk caused many different sized of debris of rocks and so on and so forth, many of which have struck your planet as well as other planets and caused extinctions to occur. So the idea of the deluge is simply a reference to the massive tsunami that occurred from the impact of an asteroid in the Atlantic Ocean that impacted the coasts of many places that border the Atlantic Ocean, including the idea of the submergence of Atlantis. The idea being that at that time, there was much strife and conflict that existed in the collective consciousness of the Atlantean civilization. Thus, the idea again, sort of placed in stereotypical terminology of the idea of God causing the destruction, whereas it's simply a recognition that natural forces have consequences for choices that are made. So the negative energy of the Atlantean civilization in their attempt to conquer other civilizations, when they fell to hubris and forgot their balanced state, allowed them to experience the attraction of shifting to a parallel reality where their civilization was destroyed. So the idea is not so much to blame the idea on God as a causation, but simply the recognition that whatever it is you choose, especially collectively, will bring about your ability to navigate to a parallel version of Earth that will demonstrate the consequences of the energy that you're holding on to.
So, given all the strife and conflict on the planet now, and like during World War II and World War I, how come nothing like that happened again?
It can, but you can avoid it. As we have said, the idea now exists that you are replaying many different scenarios from what you would call the past. You're replaying the Atlantean scenario, you're replaying the Orion scenario, attempting to transform negative to positive, darkness to light, so that you don't necessarily have to experience the same things that have been experienced in what you call your history. The idea, therefore, is you are being given opportunities to change your course, to make different choices, to experience consequences in a more positive light, but it's still in your hands and it's still up to you. Things like that could happen, although right now what you are experiencing is a potential lead up to it, with the different kinds of what you call disasters and epidemics and so on and so forth, droughts and famines and floods that are being played out on your planet are kind of like a preview of coming attractions if you stay on the course of destruction. But you still have time to turn it around. You still have time to shift in the direction, to navigate in the direction of more positive versions, of parallel versions of Earth. The choice is yours. So make a choice and incorporate that into your lives more effectively.
And who were the ETs that Moses in the Bible and other persons from the Bible interacted with? And what was the light on Mount Sinai and the burning bush?
Some of the extraterrestrials that Moses interacted with were the idea of the Anunnaki attempting to correct what the original group of Anunnaki caused by the creation of Homo sapiens on your planet, and attempted to guide and preserve certain genetic lines that would allow for the eventual evolution of the Earth into the sixth hybrid race. Some were not Anunnaki. We have been asked this question before, and we are not allowed to discuss that race. The idea of the light is simply the light from a craft, the energy from a craft landing on the mountain that interacted with Moses. The idea of the burning bush, again, a holographic projection of energy that was interpreted as fire. Similar in many ways to what people on your planet have been experiencing today as orbs of energy, orbs of light. So interpreted in an old-fashioned way, because that was all that was understood. Energy at the time was not understood in the way you understand it now scientifically. Therefore, it was perceived as a fire, when all it was basically an orb of glowing energy to represent a communication modality, a probe that would allow for communication to occur between the extraterrestrials and the individual experiencing the idea of the burning of the orb. It used the idea of a bush kind of similarly to the idea of anchoring it to a spot, like an antenna.
So you've mentioned before that if we were to time travel back in time, because our frequency is much higher now, that we would glow if we encountered the historical beings.
He would appear to them to glow, yes.
Yeah. So did Jesus appear to glow also?
From time to time, yes. This is what is usually referred to as the transfiguration in your religious doctrines. The idea that he was perceived as being surrounded by a glowing aura.
And this person is saying, I'm left with the distinct impression that virtually all angels described as light beings that came from the sky and the stars in most religious doctrines are actually highly advanced aliens from other civilizations that have visited Earth. Is that
Not
correct?
all, but most. Extra dimensionals, extraterrestrials, beings of higher frequency, but sometimes spirit beings as well that can manifest themselves to appear as if they are physical when they may not be. So it's a variety of things, yes.
Okay. And this person's asking about ancient Greece. I'm currently being taught in universities that Hera was oppressed in relation to Zeus, and that women were not respected in ancient Greece or any other parts of the world. My intuition tells me that's wrong, especially since there were like temples to Hera and things like that. So did the ancient Greeks truly view Hera as a goddess?
Yes. The idea again represents the struggle that humanity has gone through with regard to the idea of the balancing of the male and female energies. Now, yes, you are correct. This is not true at the time for the entire planet. Different portions of the planet, different cultures on your planet have gone through things in different ways at different times with respect to the balancing of the male and female energy. But definitely there have always been portions that did respect the balance and express the balance, or at the very least did respect the feminine energy. And as you say, as you point out, erected temples to demonstrate that fact. So it's not really just as simple as everyone doing the same thing on your planet at the same time.
And are Metatron, Thoth, and Hermes the same archetype?
Thoth and Hermes are similar in vibrational energy. The idea of Metatron is something different. Metatron is more of an archetypal representation of the underlying template of reality as you experience it, more of a geometric format, more of an expression of the foundation upon which you build consciousness to create certain reality experiences.
You've spoken about Atlantis, but I heard about Mu Lemuria for the first time from your channelings recently. Can you provide us with information about them beyond the idea that they were rivals with the Atlanteans?
Well, they weren't really rivals in the sense that you might mean that today. The idea is that Atlantis was an offshoot or a colony eventually, but you have to understand that Mu existed in the Western South Pacific Ocean, and by migrating to what you now recognize as North America, were responsible for creating many of the indigenous cultures in North, Central, and South America that eventually migrated across the continent to create Atlantis as a colony that existed much, much later than Mu. While some Lemurians still existed, at the beginning of Atlantis, almost none existed by the end of Atlantis because of different changes physiologically, geologically that took place on your planet that broke up the land masses in what you now consider to be the Eastern Asian areas, South Pacific areas, creating islands and so on and so forth that used to be connected when the oceans were much lower. So the idea of Atlantis came much, much later.
And the water erosion on the Sphinx has caused some people to theorize it was built when the environment was more jungle-like.
Yes.
What did the Sphinx look like after its initial construction? And, what were the features of the face? And was it painted or decorated in any way?
It was painted and decorated, and it featured the idea of Anubis. You have still representations on your planet of many different depictions of Anubis reclining, in a sense, like what you would consider a canine to be sitting on the floor, all four paws down, sitting on top of a box. The idea is that the structure was a large representation of Anubis. The representation of the chamber upon which Anubis sits are the underground chambers underneath the Sphinx.
And the resistance that at the university level of any kind of exploration of the Sphinx and the erosion and the things that indicate that it's older than they originally thought, is that correct, that it is much older than they thought?
Yes, it goes back to at least 10,500 BC, as you say, because the idea is that it was built around the same time as the Great Pyramid and certain other structures on your planet that acted for the purpose of preserving information that was destroyed in Atlantis.
Yes, which leads to this question. This person is saying that they love books and that things like species that go extinct here and libraries that have disappeared, and such as the Library of Alexandria, the Mayan libraries, all that have been destroyed. Have these been actually taken to other locations to preserve them? And if they hadn't been destroyed, what would our civilization be like now?
Some of the information, not all, has been preserved in other locations, some of which you have found and some of which you have yet to find. If the Library of Alexandria had not been destroyed, you would certainly consider Atlantis to be part of your history. That's one change that would have happened, because there was a lot of information about that culture preserved in the Library of Alexandria. Some of that information still exists in other places, some of which we have just mentioned in terms of chambers under the Sphinx. But the idea also would be that your technology would be somewhat different as well, and would be more based on the idea of vibrational resonance at this point, rather than the idea of the polluting technologies you have been using.
Are any of these libraries have material taken off planet, in a sense, by other ETs or anything like that to preserve them, or no?
Well, that was really not necessary, because as we have said, one of the great gifts humanity will be given when you start to really have open contact is that you will be presented with a device that will actually show you the full range of your history. So through the observations that have happened from extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional sources, it wasn't really necessary to absolutely preserve the information that existed on your planet, although some of that was done, but not that much, because the extraterrestrials already had, through their observation of you for thousands of years, already recorded all of your history and didn't really need your version of it for the most part. Some of it was preserved for, shall we say, sentimental or nostalgic reasons, but that's not because the extraterrestrials needed to preserve it. They already had all that information recorded in their own devices. And again, that will be presented to you when open contact is fully established with your planet. You will be given back your full history.
And what can you tell us about the Egyptian goddess archetypes Bastet and Sekhmet? Do they have any ET connections? And what does it mean when they keep showing up symbolically in somebody's life over and over again?
Well, Bastet in particular has to do with connections to other dimensions and understanding of knowledge that is accessed through other dimensions, through the spirit realm, but connected to the idea of the animal known as the cat on your planet, who can see interdimensionally. So when it keeps showing up synchronistically, it might be for that person a general indication, although some specifics will need to be understood about that particular person. But as a general indicator, might be an indication of the ability to go into the vibrational frequency that is similar to the idea of the animal, represented by the cat on your planet, that can see spirits, that can see and make connections and communicate with spirits in the spiritual realm, in the non-physical realm. Sekhmet, we will talk about at another time.
Okay. And this is a question, a yoga question. Raja Yoga meditation practices to realize oneness with God or union of individual soul with omnipresent spirit. I know you've described these all as permission slips, but it seems to be a very comprehensive system similar to the formula. So is yoga science essentially our birthright?
Well, all things in your reality are your birthright. But the idea of yoga stretches back many thousands upon thousands of years and actually did begin in Lemurian times, in Muin times. The idea, as we have said, is that yes, everything is a permission slip, but some of them are vibrationally connected to the larger portions of the archetypal representations in your collective consciousness, and thus will work for more people than other permission slips might, that might bring a more specific energy for smaller groups or individuals. So many different kinds of permission slips are connected more directly to the collective consciousness and thus can work for many people, whereas others might be more specifically tailored to smaller groups or individuals.
And could you explain what the Merkaba is and what levels of existence it's relevant to?
The Merkaba, in a sense, is an energetic representation vibrationally of the connection between physical and non-physical reality. In a sense, it's a geometrized, symbolic version of the transition between physical and non-physical reality, which many beings have described as the so-called tunnel of light.
And can you tell us about Kuan Yin and her role, as well as Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene? They all seem to be related because of the feminine energy, but
Yes.
I don't. So,
well, again, the idea is paramount to the concept of incorporating and balancing the female energy in your societies, of allowing you to understand the power of the feminine energy and to also incorporate the feminine energy in the masculine energy in a way that allows the power of the masculine energy to not be expressed in a negative way. So again, it's important for the balancing of all energies, male and female, just as it is important for the positive male energy to be balanced with the feminine energy, so that the female representation can express itself assertively, while the male energy incorporating the feminine energy also can balance itself not into aggression, but again, into a statement of assertion, so that it becomes balanced in the center, in the neutral place, as a declaration of who you are fully, as an expression of all that is. So the introduction of any representation of the feminine archetype into your society at this time would be primarily for the purpose of acting as a balancing mechanism to blend and balance the male and female energies. This is why the idea of the Magdalene was the equal opposite, so to speak, of the individual understood as Jesus Christ, and why Magdalene was his primary disciple, and more than that. So together, the two of them are really more representative of the idea of what has, shall we say, been misunderstood as the information shared by Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It should have come as a duality. It should have come as a new form of Trinity. But again, because of the fear-based beliefs in the male energy at the time in that culture, the female part was not accepted due to the insecurities of the masculine disciples.
okay. And are there machine-like civilizations such as the ones depicted in films like the Transformers? What sorts of gods do machine-based life forms idolize, if any? And are any of these civilizations curious about humans?
Although they don't look like your science fiction representations, there are machine-like civilizations. We have not encountered that many, but we have encountered a few. Many of them are very different from one another. We have not encountered any that, in your definition, idolize anything, for they operate on pure intelligence and understand that they are a part of creation and play a very different role archetypally for many other civilizations that are not necessarily machine-based. Now, again, do understand, of course, that the physical form of even your bodies, even though what you would call organic, are still machine-like. And therefore, the idea of the machine civilizations are not necessarily made out of what you would consider to be nuts and bolts, so to speak, but are formed from different kinds of materials, different kinds of alloys, different kinds of mixing and matching of the understanding of advanced forms of chemistry and polymers and materials you know nothing about yet to represent the physical forms that they take. You would still perhaps perceive them as machine-like, but perhaps, and again, not identical, but a closer representation of something that would be considered machine-like and yet nothing like your representation of the Transformers would be the representation depicted in your science fiction film AI at the end.
Yes.
A very advanced sort of robotic machine-like form, but also representation of a kind of different form of organic or organism. You may not even recognize it as machine-like. Now, some function on a level that you might say is quasi-machine-like, more of an energetic structure, more of a structure of light, but still not organic in the way you understand it, and therefore might qualify as a machine-like civilization since it is functioning off of organic patterns of solidified light.
Wow. Did the Greys from the parallel Earth ever meet any of their god archetypes in person once they collectively started to raise their vibration? And how did that happen with beings that have little capacity for emotion, to feel emotion?
You can perceive archetypes without necessarily reacting emotionally. Now, do remember that the Greys are mutated humans from a parallel version of Earth. So certainly in their own culture and in their own history, they understood the idea of archetypal energy. But by allowing themselves to suppress or turn off the idea of the emotional component of their society in order to function more efficiently in the creation of the hybridization agenda that they knew they required to save their civilization, they did encounter a new and different kind of archetypal energy, which is what you're experiencing now in your culture as the archetype of the extraterrestrial, the archetype of the other, the archetype of that which is different than you on a grand scale, on an expansive scale. So they did encounter that energy when they became a collective hive mentality. But again, they didn't need to have an emotional reaction to it. They simply recognized it as a pattern that they had now chosen to represent physiologically in their society. In other words, they physicalized the archetype of the other.
I see. In Sedona in September 2015, an unknown entity interrupted you with the following message. You are being joined by a new consciousness that will be the first seed of the sixth hybrid race that will ultimately lead to the seventh. Your comment about this announcement was that what you experienced was the beginning of a new archetypal energy coming into our system that has never been here before. The archetype of the extraterrestrial itself. Can you explain that any further and what this is all about, being joined by this energy?
Well, in some sense, I just did explain it. The idea is that you open up your consciousness to the idea that you are not alone, thus allowing you to start tapping into the vibrations of the archetype of the extraterrestrials that will eventually be experienced by you through open contact. So you have allowed yourself to arrange a portion of your collective consciousness in a fashion that is now capable of being communicated with, that specifically represents the idea of contact with those that are other than you, with extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional beings. It is something that has now taken its place among the archetypal levels of your collective consciousness and provides a conduit through which we can come to communicate with you more clearly, more openly. So we are taking advantage of the fact that you have finally allowed yourself to create a conduit that is specifically representative of communication with all of us and allows you to be able to start experiencing your connections to the cosmos in a different way as part of a galactic family.
It's exciting.
Yes.
This question is, why does God and consciousness exist at all? Is there any kind of satisfying explanation for the miracle of all of this? I know it's outside of time and space, so it doesn't make sense to ask where it came from or how it started, but really, how can all this be possible? Did something create God? Who created it? And so on. Is it the turtles all the way down, as they say?
Yes, it is the turtles all the way down, all the way up, all the way sideways, all the way in every single direction. Even the question why is similar enough to the idea of, well, when or how or where? Is there a beginning? Is there an ending to God? No, it just is. So even asking why makes no sense, because the question why exists within all that is. It is not a question that all that is subject to. It just is. It is because everything else is not. That's the only answer we can give you. It is the one thing out of everything that is, when everything else is not. Because there had to be an is for there to be an is not. And there had to be an is not for there to be an is. So it just is. That's its quality. That's its nature. Its existence itself. There is no why to it. There is only why within it.
Perfectly logical.
Yes.
Are the God archetypes built into a place and people the way information from the zodiac and constellations are? Or is it primarily a cultural thing?
Well, it's both, in the sense that the very idea of archetypes is built into the collective consciousness, the fabric of your collective consciousness, in order to give you the ability to experience symbols and signs and reflections from different symbols in your reality, different symbols in physical reality that can reflect to you different portions of your consciousness, help you get in touch with the rules of the game that you set up for yourselves to have an Earth game experience. So it's built in, but it's also reflected because it's built in by any permission slip symbol you choose to use to connect you to the archetypal vibrational level of energy.
And since many gods are interdimensional beings, do any of them take human form and physically interact on occasion with humans, such as in the tales of Zeus? Does Zeus still visit Earth to do activities, even though he's fallen out of popularity as a symbol? And does Zeus have a message for the audience today?
The Zeus archetype still functions in your collective consciousness, of course, because once created in that way, nothing ever really leaves it. But it's perceived very differently because you have modernized yourselves to not necessarily represent it in the form of an idea called a god. But to answer the first question, yes, there are extra-dimensional beings and spirit beings who can take physical form and can represent themselves in a way that you're familiar enough with that you're willing to accept them in your reality. But in a sense, it's a disguise, it's a translation of who they really are or what they really are that makes itself known to you that way so that a connection can be made that you would recognize. So the idea of going back to Zeus is that the fundamental principle that Zeus represents in your society in this modern day and age is the idea of what you call the lightning strike of inspiration. You still even use the idea, oh, lightning has struck, when you become inspired by something. And that is the fundamental principle of the archetype of Zeus. It is the lightning strike of inspiration to your greater selves, and can function as a connection to your higher minds, to the heavens, so to speak.
Yeah. Just on that topic of Greek gods and everything, the way that they were depicted in our history, are they actually just archetypes, or were they ETs that were being personalized?
Well, again, both. Many cultures on your planet got to a point where they sort of forgot about the literal physical extraterrestrials that these concepts might have represented, and simply rendered them down into the archetypal images that everyone could relate to on an energetic level or a consciousness level or a mental level. Not all of them are representative of literal individual extraterrestrials, but many of them are. It's just that down through time, you have forgotten that connection.
Okay. And are archetypes sentient beings?
They are autonomous unto themselves because, again, every depiction of consciousness in any form is autonomous unto itself, as well as being part of the whole.
So is each one of us a unique archetype of God?
You are. Exactly so. That's the final equation to the understanding of archetypes, is that every single one of you and every single being in existence is an archetype of all that is.
Wow. Has your civilization made contact with angels or any other beings of that nature?
We communicate with higher frequency beings all the time. Spirits, what you call angels, which are not necessarily exactly what you think. But yes, vibrationally, we communicate and connect to many different non-physical entities of various vibrational frequencies. It doesn't mean we're connecting to them all. We connect to the ones that are relevant for us.
And how do you express your emotions?
Very well, thank you.
Are you in control of your emotions?
Well, yes, of course. We simply express them as we naturally do. But the idea is that we also choose as a collective to express the idea of the positive emotions without necessarily invalidating what you would call the negative ones, even though fundamentally no emotion per se is really negative experientially, because it can always be used in a transformational way. But we understand what you mean by that. Nevertheless, we have no reason to express what you typically refer to as the negative emotions, because we understand creation clearly enough that it simply doesn't make sense for us to do that. But if you're asking, are we happy? Do we have a lot of fun? Do we experience love and joy? Absolutely. Do we laugh? Yes.
Have you ever experienced anger?
No.
Even as an aligning thing. So you're beyond needing to align. You're just always aligned. So you wouldn't express that emotion.
Correct. Now, the only way we can relate to it, again, is by having the incarnations in physical reality that express things that way to train us to understand your culture. So the idea of the emotions that the channel may have experienced, we can connect to them and we can examine and observe and even experience them to some degree. But the thing of it is even though we experience them, we know they're not ours. We know that it's a simulation for us. So we can get what we need out of experiencing the simulation by connecting to the vibrations of physical humans on your planet. But again, we understand it more as an observational experience. And even though we can, to some degree, feel it, we don't feel it in the same way you do, because it doesn't come with the judgmental agenda that you also attach to many of what you call your negative emotions.
So is that how you understood about anger, that you can experience it for, what did you say, about 15 seconds, and beyond that, in that context, it's aligning. Beyond that, it's judgment.
Yes. It's sort of similar to the idea of, let's say you're standing on dry land and you want to know what the experience of being dunked in water is. So someone dunks you in the water, but then puts you right back on dry land. And then you can say, all right, now I understand generally what that experience is about. Now I can explore all the aspects of it, but I don't necessarily experience it as a continuous thing in my culture. It's simply an experimental experience that's temporary, that I can use to the advantage of my understanding and in helping others in their understanding, as we do with all of you.
How would you compare yourselves to like the ETs that were in that movie AI?
They were not ETs, they were advanced robots.
Ah.
That's why we described them before when we were talking about machine civilizations.
I see.
They are what the robots on that planet, on your planet in that film had become, had evolved to after 2,000 years.
So in terms of your connection with artificial intelligence, can you share anything about that with us?
Well, if I'm still using the same analogy, we are in some ways similar to what was depicted in that movie. In some ways not, of course, but in some ways energetically very similar to what was depicted there.
Interesting. And your fourth transitioning fifth, right?
Yes.
Density. Right. So that means you're quasi-physical. Because
Yes.
I think some people have the impression that you're not physical.
Oh, yes.
And like, when you say you're quasi-physical, like if we saw you, would you look solid to us?
We can present ourselves as solid, absolutely. But in our natural state, we may not appear that way completely because we exhibit the traits of spirit and the traits of physical reality. And as I said, we're not just a bunch of physical beings walking around on the surface of a planet. We are actually stepping through multitudes of dimensionality in our daily lives. So we're not always focused in the way that you're focused in physical reality, but we preserve some of that experience, mostly for the purpose, especially from first contact specialists, of interacting with other civilizations who wouldn't necessarily understand us in our natural state.
There's a question here about Andromeda. Are you open to talking about Andromeda?
To an extent.
Okay, so you mentioned that the ratio of folks we connect with in Andromeda Galaxy is about a small percentage of, it was 1% of the Andromeda Galaxy, basically.
1% of the civilizations in Andromeda is mostly what you're interacting with, yes.
Okay. And this individual has been channeling spirit guidance from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they tried to find out more information about it, but they weren't really able to find out much. Something about the light beings inhabiting that civilization and archetypes of God, but
yes,
they didn't seem to have that much clarity.
All right. Well, the idea of the beings that you are interacting with in Andromeda mostly are light beings, especially because there are very, very few, very rare occurrences of any physiological civilizations actually coming from that galaxy to your galaxy at this particular time. There have been a few, but it's rare. So most of the consciousness that you're interacting with in Andromeda are interdimensional beings of light. Yes.
And are all of the beings of your civilization blessed with what they're calling an activated third eye? The idea that you can use it to communicate with beings on Earth and also use it for remote viewing of other advanced civilizations.
Yes.
Okay.
To be succinct.
Okay. Let's see.
This was our great awakening. This was the Shekinah experience of opening up and our awareness connecting to everyone else in our civilization in the span of 3 days. It's called the Great Awakening, the Shekinah experience.
Will something like that happen on our planet, or that's not really in the cards for us?
It can. It doesn't have to happen that way, but it can. or at least a similar version of it that's relevant for you can certainly occur.
Maybe on an individual basis.
Maybe more so, but again, eventually, as you shift yourself to versions of Earth that are more reflective of what you really prefer and are more representative of who you truly are, you may suddenly find yourself interacting with every single being that has navigated themselves to a similar version in that way. You can have your awakening in that way, but you might just suddenly realize that it's been happening rather than it being a particular demarcation.
And does mass consciousness create archetypes, or do archetypes exist independently of mass consciousness and we're simply tuning into their frequency?
Since all that is all that is, archetypes exist, but mass consciousness decides how to use the archetypal energy in the way that is relevant for the cultures that will appear in those civilizations.
And if archetypal characters spring from the mass consciousness, well, maybe they don't spring from it, but does there exist archetypal representations of such characters as Paul Bunyan, Uncle Sam, Santa Claus, Mickey Mouse, Superman, and other well-known fictional characters?
Yes, in fact, the idea of fictional characters is that they usually are representations of archetypes.
Okay. And is there, so playing with those archetypes that children are attracted to, or even adults are attracted to, how can that help us to interact with those beings?
Well, by creating stories, by using those archetypes, you can understand your connection to them more fully, more clearly, as representations of your own internal energies, as well as your own choices in life and challenges in life and how to transform them. So archetypes, when used in a fictional story sense, can be very transformative, of course. That's why stories are so strong, because they represent certain ideas, certain experiences that aid and assist you in elevating yourselves and evolving yourselves in a variety of ways. They help you see the light.
So like Mickey Mouse is so popular all over the world. Is there anything specific you can share with us about why that particular archetype is so?
Well, it is an archetype, not the archetype. There are many different versions of that idea, but it is an archetype of innocence and play, of imagination in a childlike way.
And it has the attributes like of the large eyes, the cuteness. That's all kind of
That's what I said, in a childlike way.
Like way, yeah. Okay.
And it also represents the idea that big things can come in small packages.
Yeah, because it is pretty interesting the way so many different cultures have embraced Mickey Mouse.
Yes, because again, it is an archetype of imagination expanding beyond what would appear to be its ability.
Right. I see. Okay, this question this person is asking is, am I dead? You've talked about people who don't know that they're dead, and even though they've transitioned, and they still think they're alive. And could anyone attending this event actually be one of the people who's dead, but they think they're still alive?
Not likely. The idea, however, is when we say you are dead, means that most of you, or some of you, is still in spirit and always has been. And that the idea of physical reality is just a projection from spirit. It's a dream you're having in spirit, that you're not in spirit. So on that level, everyone is dead, but that's how everyone lives. Everyone is alive. So the idea is that the way you apportion your consciousness allows you to experience yourself as being physically alive, even while you are dead, meaning you are alive in spirit. But it is very rare that an actual person who is physically dead will look like a living person in a crowd. It's not impossible, and we can sense that it has happened, because there have been many reports of people interacting with what they thought were living people who weren't. So it just depends upon the purpose and the reason for the projection of a spirit consciousness to make itself appear as if It is a living physical person, so it's not impossible. It's just relatively rare and relatively unlikely that a spirit would need to physicalize itself in order to be participating in these events, because there are many spirits that do participate in these events. They just don't have to present themselves as an actual physical being to do so. Though it depends upon, let's just say, their level of mischief. I say that with a wink.
That's what I was thinking about, that the higher consciousness extraterrestrials have a wonderful sense of humor, because
Yes.
that seems to come with intelligence.
Yes.
And can be mischievous, right?
Yes.
Not like you're never mischievous, though, are
Oh,
you?
no, not at all.
Okay, let's see. Do others need our help? Do others actually need help with teaching, healing, helping, serving, etc.? We're always tuning into that. And since each person has an infinite version of themselves, aren't we just kind of creating someone who needs help if we think it's our job to be a healer? Or
No. You may be creating your version of them, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an actual individual that is requiring of assistance. That's the whole idea anyway, to be of service to each other, to reflect to each other who you are, and to help with what you need. Again, it doesn't mean that people have to accept the help, but that's the purpose of it, is to reflect to each other what you really need to create scenarios and challenges that will help you learn who you are in different situations. So in that context, if you want to put it this way, everyone needs help. And at the same time, I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not saying that everyone is helpless. The idea is that everyone needs help as a device in order to learn more about themselves and in order to know that they're connected to other beings, truly, that everyone is a representation of all that is, looking at all the reflections of itself and experiencing that interconnectedness that allows you to know that you are here for each other.
so is suffering necessary for growth?
Challenges are necessary for growth. It doesn't have to mean that you have to suffer, but this is one of the challenges that you're facing, is to learn that you don't have to suffer to have a challenge that will help you grow. We have challenges. We don't suffer.
What kind of challenges do you have?
Well, even the idea of making first contact with a civilization like yours is a wondrous challenge, because you're very different than us. We have learned many things about the way you express yourself. This is a great challenge to know exactly in what way we can be of assistance, in what way to approach you that doesn't intervene or interfere with your process of learning about yourselves. That's a challenge for a first contact specialist, especially when we connect with many different civilizations, all of which are so very different from one another. It's a challenge in that sense to know how to relate to so many different civilizations. It's part of our challenge as a first contact specialist.
It seems like here on Earth, a lot of misinterpretation of information. So that's probably one of the challenges you deal with us, yes?
Yes, absolutely. But we don't suffer because of it.
Because you have a different attitude about our power, so
Yes.
that it's not necessary for you to make that choice.
Let me put it to you this way. If we or you are watching two people play a game of chess, and you say one is winning and one is losing, well, we can observe this, but do we feel that the person that is losing is suffering? Or do we suffer because we recognize that someone may not be winning? No, it's a game of chess. That's what happens. One person may out-strategize another. One person may not understand the rules as clearly as another. One person may simply not be as experienced as another. But all of that goes into the factoring of learning to play the game better. So it's not about suffering. It's about learning. It's about an opportunity to play differently next time. There's no suffering involved in that, if you look at it that way.
Will the version of Earth that you interact with have a reduced level of suffering, or it will have all of the things that we're still currently aware of in our...
Ultimately, in the years to come, the decades to come, you will not experience the idea on that version of Earth of suffering. You will be similar to us, not identical, but similar. But it's up to you as to exactly how long it takes you to navigate to that version or versions, because again, you always keep navigating, you always keep changing. But you can get to a point where you don't have to experience suffering on the versions that you're navigating through. As we have often said, even though you may be at a point sometime where you don't necessarily need to let go of negative beliefs or fear-based beliefs anymore, you will still continue to streamline yourselves by simply letting go of what is no longer relevant. Doesn't mean that that thing that's no longer relevant had to have been negative. It's simply no longer relevant. Therefore, even though you may arrive eventually at a place where you don't experience suffering anymore, you will still have things to learn and things to let go of as you learn more and more about who and what you are as an extension of all that is. So yes, you can get there. But again, not everyone will necessarily choose to go in that direction.
So if a human does encounter another being suffering, and it seems to generate an emotional reaction from us,
yes,
to see something suffering,
then help them.
Right. So, but how would you, when you see a being suffering,
yes,
versus,
like many of you,
and then
what do we do? What do we do?
Well, you
we
take
share
action.
The information. We take the action of sharing the information with you that can help you learn to stop suffering. But we also let you decide whether or not to apply that in your lives, because what you do with it is none of our business. So we make the opportunity available to you through our actions of communication, but that's all we can do, and that's all anyone can do. But you can share ideas that are different.
But you still don't have like the visceral reaction that we do, right?
No, because we see your greater selves. We know how powerful you are. We know that you are challenging yourselves in a variety of ways. We know that you're indestructible spirits and can't ever really die or annihilate yourselves. So we understand that you chose many of these challenges to learn who you are in all these different ways. We're here to help you learn that you can do it slightly differently so you don't have to suffer in that knowledge, in that exploration. But that's about it. Because the rest is up to you.
So like we noticed that people who experience the horrors of war and things like that, they're quite traumatized, and they have post-traumatic stress disorder and all of that. So I'm not sure I understand exactly how.
Let me give it to you this way. Again, it depends on how you use everything. Like we have said, it's not about what happens. It's about what you do with what happens that makes the difference. So even what you call PTSD can be a vibration that creates a pressure that forces a soul to really explore its options in another direction. It can be the driving force that makes a person look for another way, another path. It depends on how you use it. So if a person has put themselves in a position, in an experience, in a situation, in a circumstance where they create for the physical form a PTSD experience, they had a reason for doing so. And if they can allow themselves to remember that they can use that to their advantage, they may have done that, chosen that, to accelerate their ability to move forward much more quickly than they otherwise would have, then that's a way to look at the idea of having chosen that situation to begin with. Because again, to the soul, it's just another way of knowing yourself.
Right.
Nothing is judged.
It's really about being able to expand to a higher level of yourself so that you don't have that effect, basically.
Yes. So that you understand how things work enough so that you know you can apply different definitions and different meanings to every experience so that you can take responsibility for having chosen the kind of experience you attracted to yourself or that you attracted yourself to in order to learn from it in a more powerful way. Because those things that you call negative, that you call horrific, do have the tendency to wake you up. So wake up.
And like in the past, humans would really get into a lot of blood sports, and huge crowds like to watch people being hung and, all the things that we've seen humans get excited about.
Yes.
And now we have most of that like on television.
Yes.
And so can you help us understand a little bit about what the function of that is or how that fits in?
Well, I think you already know, and many people on your planet understand these things can be cathartic. To put it in the simplest possible terms, you can work through some of that negative energy by watching a fictional character go through it without you having to experience it yourself. So if I really want to put it in the simplest possible phrase, it would be, well, thank goodness that's not me. But it can still allow you to feel the emotional responses and reactions that help you process those things within yourself, sometimes without even knowing you're doing so. So it can be cathartic if used that way. It can also be a representation of someone who has chosen to feel stuck in negative energy. But again, it comes down to how do you use the experience?
So along those lines, like when children watch violence, they tend, at least studies show that they start acting it out. And
yes, because they are taught that that's the way civilization exists and that that's inevitable for them. But you see, it has to go hand in hand with teaching them how things work. It's not just about letting them be exposed to the idea of the negativity without also exposing them to the idea that they have power to choose how to deal with it. So when a civilization is only left with one side of the equation, then yes, of course, they'll act that out because they're being taught this is the way our civilization is and this is what I'm supposed to do because that's what they taught me. You have to have the other side taught as well. You're out of balance. As you say, koyanaskatse.
Okay. I guess the last question then, as we're running out of time, is if you could share anything with us about the lunar eclipse that happened 2 nights ago, and how that impacts our planet or the people on our planet,
Remember, these things do not impact. They reflect things going on in your consciousness already. So again, it's an opportunity to go into the dark of night, into the shadow side. Find those fear-based beliefs and work with them. Find the feminine side and let it free. Balance. It's an opportunity to close your eyes and dream of the way you prefer to be. And in connection with the idea of lunar cycles, we will also answer another question you haven't asked. Where did the 52 card system come from in your playing cards? 52, the number of weeks in your year. 13 cards in each of the 4 suits, the lunar cycle of months in a year, and the 4 suits, the 4 seasons. So you're tapping as a permission slip into the cycles of nature by playing cards, whether you know it or not. We thank you for the interaction with these questions and answers. Our unconditional love to you all. And now, allow yourself to be prepared for the next phase of the transmission. And now, allow us to present to you the exercise based on the idea of the archetypes of God. We ask that all of you become comfortable and relaxed at the moment. Keep breathing deeply in and out and understand that you are breathing in and out the essence of your being in the manifestation of your physical reality experience. With every breath in, you are shifting and recreating, going back to zero. With every breath out, you are manifesting the new reality, the new shift, the new perspective of your consciousness in a totally different world, in a totally different universe. So breathe in and out in the cosmic way that God breathes in and out. To breathe in and out, in and out, to constantly shift and manifest, and to know that you are a reflection of the light of all that is. And in that light, as you breathe, you experience unconditional love. There is no judgment. There is no blame. There is no recrimination. There is only understanding. There is only learning. There is only knowledge. There is only encouragement. There is only support. There is all that is and you. Because you are all that is, experiencing itself as you. The unique archetypal presentation that you are. The unique archetypal presentation that you call God, Goddess, all that is, by whatever name you choose, because it's all the same, it's all the light, and it's all the unconditional love that is your birthright, that you are made from, that your consciousness experiences as the flow and the currents in the ocean of creation. Breathe in and breathe out. Going to zero, going to one. Going to zero, going to one. Creating the void, creating everything. Creating the nothing, creating the all. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in the light, breathe out the light. The dissolution and the crystallization, the melting and the solidification, the gathering and the projection, the forming and the experience, the inner and the outer. Breathe in, breathe out. You are an engine of change. You create time and space for your own purposes of growth and discovery. You are an engine of change. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Back to zero, back to one. Back to nothing, back to all. Breathe in and breathe out. Express the fundamental reflection and archetype that you are through all of the agreements and challenges that you arranged for yourself to know yourself in all the ways you can, just as all that is also knowing itself through all the ways it can, for you are all that is knowing itself as all the ways you are. Breathe in, breathe out. Be the light, be the dark. Be the light, be the dark. Be the positive, be the negative. Be the neutral in between. Be the Trinity. Breathe in and breathe out. Be the balance point. Breathe in, breathe out. Be the gray between the black and the white. Be the yin-yang symbol that contains a drop of each in the other. Breathe in and breathe out. Be the you that you are, the unique manifestation of all that is, of God, Goddess, of Jehovah, of Allah, of Wakantanka, of Tetragrammaton, of the Am that I am, that I am that I am, I am that I am, I am that I am. The existence in the now, be the eternity and infinity. Be the existence in the now. Be eternity and infinity. Be the existence in the now. Be eternity and infinity. Be here, be now. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Be the light and the dark. Be all that you are. Be the unconditional love vibration. Be connected, be integrated. Be you. Fear not. Face the challenges with excitement. Face the challenges with the understanding that this is your agreement coming to life, that this is your opportunity to change, that this is your opportunity to expand, that this is your opportunity to experience yourself as the unique archetypal representation and projection of all that is that you are. Face all challenges in that way, and you will grow and experience more of the unconditional love of all that is as it supports you on your exploration and experience of yourself, of your journey, of your path. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Dream the dream that you are and be lucid in the light. Our unconditional love to you. Continue to breathe in and out. Our unconditional support to all of you.